Hi, everyone. I'm Kat, your host. Welcome to the show, the Austin Downbeat. This is episode 85. I have a great one for you. Kirk Smith is my guest. He is multi-talented. He has a brand new album released late last year called Ithaca. You should check that out. And this episode airs just in time for you to get a ticket to his full band studio show, his own personal home studio for only $10 on February 9th. So go to Bandcamp and look for Kirk Smith, or you can go to Kirk Smith Music on Instagram and you can follow him and go to his bio and get a ticket there. Enjoy my conversation with him, a sweetheart, an absolute unique voice, and his offering to us through his music is just, it's so cool and unique and really, really good. I dig it. So thanks to Kirk for coming on. And please enjoy the show. Ready? I'm so happy to have you on, everybody. This is Kirk Smith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Me too. I'm so excited, even more excited just from our pre-record conversation. I feel like you're just full of surprises. So let's dive in the short time that we have. Gosh, where do we start? At the top, I just want to make sure people hear, because sometimes people don't listen all the way through. So I do want to hit a couple things that are time sensitive because you sold out for February 9th at your studio
No,
show?
we have a few tickets left. So
Okay.
depending
Yes.
on when this airs,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely go. You can go through the link on my Instagram, Kirk Smith Music, or you can go right to Bandcamp.
Cool.
Bandcamp Kirk Smith, you'll see it. There's a link there, and you can buy tickets.
Yeah,
And if
and
it's
they're 10
available,
bucks. Yeah, they're $10, right?
yeah, that's right.
And then it's an intimate show in your studio.
Yeah, it's in the space right here where we are today.
We're off in the corner where that
Over by where
sweet
the
little
guitar
guitar is. It just
is.
so desperately wants to be played. That's awesome. So it's a full band studio show on February 9th. $10 gets you in. And there's a couple tickets left. Go to Bandcamp, hit up Kirk Smith, and get your booty in a chair because I feel like it would be a good one. That space seems so interesting to me. Um, Lots of things about you seem really interesting. You don't hail from Austin, but you've been here for a while. Yeah, you're from Kansas.
Yeah, that's right. I came here in 1990
Ooh, I love the 90s.
for a while. I came here to go to college, and there was just no compelling reason to leave.
That's
So,
fair.
yeah.
What did you study in college? I mean, at that point, were you doing music? Are you one of these people where it's been like music in your blood forever, or what's your relationship with music?
Yeah, when I grew up in Kansas, it was a cool thing to be in sports and to be in choir and to dance and like to just to do all these kinds of things. And I don't know if that was like a result of this being like a small town and kind of a farm community where people were always engaged in doing different things. And, like uh, to me, the farmer is like the quintessential Renaissance character because you have to
Mhm.
do everything. You can't call someone necessarily when your tractor breaks down. You can't call the expert when it's time to plant your field or harvest or deal with your animals. There's not always a vet nearby. So it's like people were just capable and people just did stuff. And it was expected that you'd race BMX on the weekends and you'd go to the homecoming dance and you would decorate. So I was always in music. I was always in choir. People played instruments all the time, not because they were professional musicians, but because like that's what you did because it was fun,
Mhm.
and like it was always just weird to me that like my kids didn't sing with their friends. I used to drag Main Street, in my little town, and just like in a Bob Seger song or Journey song or something like that from the 80s, and like we would be singing at the top of our lungs and like, yeah, so that was just
Yeah.
something I did. And when I got to college, I continued to do that. And I was in choirs and stuff in college, and I played in bands in high school, and I did that for a while. here in Austin. And then when my son was born, I started to realize, well, maybe it would make more sense if I had a job or like had work where I wasn't traveling all the time.
Yeah.
So I started to rent out theater space to put on my own shows.
Oh, wow.
And I got connected with this theater company, and I was doing like my own shows there, like rock shows. And
Mhm.
then they started hiring me to do music for plays and things like that. And then I had a philosophy degree by that point and an English degree, and so they were hiring me to like adapt plays for children's theater, and then adapt novels to make them into plays, and like so I was just again, it was like it didn't occur to me
Mm.
that I couldn't do that. Like I
Wow.
needed money, and somebody was interested in having me do some work, and I was like, well, yeah, I assumed I was competent, and
Mhm.
then I just kept working on it until it was like,
You're
I
actually doing it. Yeah.
was actually doing it. And so anyway, that lasted for a while, and then then I decided I would make a record, and uh, so of course I didn't have enough money to pay professional musicians, so I played everything, and I didn't really have a studio, so like I pieced together equipment and recorded most of it at home. And I
Mhm.
got it as far as I could. And, then I went to a professional studio after that to finish some of the stuff and to mix it and released it. And, you know, it did fine, but it didn't do fine enough to support like a household with, we had 3 children by that time.
Yeah.
And, Austin was still much less expensive, but like everyone has to eat.
Yeah.
And, and my wife is working and we're trying to make it happen. And, but it was like, it's so difficult, as everyone knows, if
Mhm.
you have to try and earn your living that way. um
Mhm.
there's like it's really difficult anyway.
Yeah.
Like to write songs and play songs and find opportunities and promote those opportunities, and like,
That's
but then
hard.
if you're always under this like grind of, oh man, I made $50 tonight, or when
Mhm.
what we needed was 150.
Mhm.
And at some point, like my wife and I had a difficult conversation, and it wasn't a conversation about you must quit and go get a job. Like I never went and got a job. It was a conversation of, are you happy?
Mm.
Are you fulfilled?
And were you at that point?
No, I
No.
wasn't. I was miserable.
Mm.
I had a lot of expectations that weren't being met.
Mhm.
I was immature as a person, so I was resentful that my expectations weren't being met.
Mhm.
I had sort of linked this idea that if you're not earning your living from your art, you're not a real artist,
Yeah.
which is which
Common, not
I mean,
true, but very common.
and not true. And it also it's just like it's such an obstacle toward
Mhm.
for creativity.
Yeah.
It's literally the wrong thing that you
Mm.
should have in mind when you sit down to work. What Write a song, make a painting, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Like those are the last things you should consider your path, to be.
Yeah.
So I put a lot of obstacles in front of myself at that time, and I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what other opportunity do we have? And in our case, the house that we had bought had gone up in value. So we got a home equity loan. We added onto our home. So then everyone had their own bedroom and their own space. So we weren't all on top of each other. I had
Mm.
a little money left over. So I bought another little junky house and fixed it up and sold it. And then the place next door to that came up for sale while I was working on it. And I bought that and kept that one. And then the place next door to that came up for sale, and it was my neighbor. And so I made a deal with them where I didn't have to put any money into it right away. And it was like,
Monopoly.
yeah. But that path just sort of kept unfolding. And, and in that time from like 2005 to 2020, we know what the Austin real estate market was doing.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like a master plan, like I'm going to step into that stream and be lifted. It's
Mhm.
just the skills that I had as a carpenter and as a storyteller and just as a work ethic that I had developed as an artist over the 10 years prior to that was like, okay,
Yeah.
get up early, work hard all day, do everything that needs to be done. Nothing is beneath you, nothing is above you.
Mm-hmm.
You do it and you ask for help, and every day, another day. And then like 15, 20 years go by like that.
It's a real farmer, beautiful, like farmer mentality, though. It really does it's a good reminder, especially for those of us that we're lucky enough to, I was born in 1976. Feel so grateful to have grown up in that time and have that, especially living now still in the time that we are now. But it is kind of reminiscent of the good old days as far as what you and I are concerned. Do you know what I mean? And then also that part of the country that you grew up in. Do you think you were able to allow, I mean, I know that wasn't like a premeditated master plan for you and your wife, but noticing those opportunities unfold, if you reverse it back and find that moment, do you think that you sort of surrendered and allowed yourself to be able to see those as opportunities because you and your wife had that conversation and it was just kind of like opening up to, like, kind of setting the gun down a little bit on all these control and expectations, and just I feel like you kind of opened yourself up for all these opportunities. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I that's one way to look at it.
Mhm.
Another way to look at it is that I just smashed into a wall. When,
That'll do it too. I was
I'll do it too, right? Like, so, I remember I had come back. I had a month-long residency at a club in New York, and so I was staying in a friend's apartment and playing every Sunday night that month, and then I was branching out and playing in Hoboken and Burlington, Vermont, and Providence, Rhode Island, and Philadelphia, and any little place I could go find a gig. And I was gone that whole time, and I came back and I had like $75 that I had made through that entire period. And and we had that conversation, and it was like, I don't, I, this can't work. And so I
yeah.
would go. One of the things that had brought me a lot of solace when I was in New York is I would just walk around at night. Like after my gig, I would just walk and just enjoy the city and just wind down from the energy of the show and all that stuff. And so I came back and I was like, let me just walk. And I would just walk through my neighborhood and for a couple of hours, usually after we'd put the kids to bed. So, 10 or 11 at night, I would just go out and walk. And like, it was so crazy because I didn't wear like technical clothing and like nice shoes. Like I wore jeans and a leather jacket and my motorcycle boots. And I just was
Fair
like,
walk.
I'm gonna like just it was a grind of some kind. But what happened is what you described is I started loosening up and
Mhm.
I started surrendering, and I just kind of like my mind began to untangle itself, and my heart started to like rest
Mm.
and fill with those things like we were talking about before, like my kids
Mm.
and my physical health and
Mm.
my partnership and my marriage
Mhm.
and certain things that I had neglected, not intentionally,
Sure.
because I felt an obligation to be myopic, like to be so focused on this one thing. I was like, if I don't give everything, then I don't deserve to make it.
Mm.
But I had never defined making it,
Right.
or I had never defined everything, or I had like, there were just all these things. And that's when I say I was immature about it.
Right.
Right. And so I just went back to the beginning and it was like, okay, what matters? And once I started to get those things in place, then yes, what you described, the opportunity was there and I could see it then.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, I can try that. And it was a timing issue. You know,
Mhm.
I, I was in alignment with that timing when
Yeah.
I hadn't been in alignment prior to that for whatever reason. And when I made this last record, Ithaca, that's out now, it was in alignment. And the people that I had wanted to work with suddenly came onto my radar, and the
Mhm.
money that I needed to pay for the engineer and to pay the session guys and all of that, like that happened to be there too. And a song got on the radio, and like there are various things that, like, yes, of course I promoted it, and yes, of course I reached out to every avenue I had, including you.
Mhm.
But people reached back for once.
Yeah.
Not for, like people reached back and said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, listen to your record," or "Yeah, I'll come do a session," or whatever. And it was like, wow, what a treat to
Yeah.
like, be in your right spot
Yeah. Don't
and
you
have,
wish
you know,
don't you wish that you could like, because I have that in my own life. I think all of us for the most part hopefully really have a season of that or an element or an experience of that where you are kind of in alignment and you can see the difference. I just wish it was easier to sort of bottle, or maybe it was a little more A plus B equals C. I know it's not and it never will be, and maybe it shouldn't be really, because I think that's part of our point of being here, in a way. It's just like to really find it on our own, but it's just so beautiful when someone does find it and you get to sort of be a part of it, because now you have this record which you talked about called Ithaca that's out. You put it out in last year, like late last year or mid last
in
year,
the summer. Yeah.
in the summer of last year. And can you talk about, I mean, obviously, once you give birth to the record, it then becomes, everyone else's between their ears and how they interpret it. But for you personally, knowing yourself and the last 20 years and how you've grown and changed and evolved, like, what does it mean for you? What does it sort of signify? Like, when you think of Ithaca, what are some things that you think about as far as what it is?
You mean the record or the?
The record, yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear the rain? I have a metal roof on my studio.
Oh, sweet. No, I can't hear it,
It's really sweet.
but I love that.
Well, I mean, the I wrote a ton of songs to get to the songs that eventually ended up on that record. And I had, my background, I had a lot of theater work and I wrote a lot of plays, and some of them were adaptations of novels and some of them were original pieces. And so and even in my real estate work, like what I always tried to do was I would try and identify an opportunity, like, what does this have for me? And what does this have for the other the other stakeholders, like my contractors, my subcontractors, like whoever's going to rent this house eventually. What about
Mhm.
the neighbors in the neighborhood? And so I was always kind of like building this narrative. It was like, this is a project. It's in this neighborhood. This is the
Mhm.
budget. These are the people who are going to work on it. These are the people I think that are going to live here someday. This is why this makes sense. This is what I can get permitted.
Mhm.
I relocated a ton of houses. That was mostly what I did. So I already have this wiring for story.
Mhm.
And it isn't story like beginning, middle, end. It's story like there's something in this core and people connect. And the core, if it's right, holds the balance.
Mhm.
So that's, to me, that's the story. So when I brought in all of these songs. I would schedule a session. I would just walk in with my guitar, and I play songs for 4 hours. I would just go through my book, play, 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 play. We got dozens of songs down, and then I was talking to the engineer, and I was like, man, I don't think I have the ability to get these songs to a place that I'm going to be happy about. But I don't know who to call. Like, I don't know any people.
Mhm.
It's like, well, how about Billy Harvey? And Billy had played in Bob Schneider's band for years and Patty Griffin's band. And like, I had seen him play solo. He's put out maybe 10 records on his own that are
Mhm.
terrific.
Yeah.
And I was like, uh, okay. And then
Okay.
did it by that time to say yes, like yes, yes. And Billy came in and it was like, man, I love these songs. This is great. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, why don't you play guitar and I'll sing and we'll record that. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And we did it. And he and I figured out arrangements. We figured out tempo, the key we wanted to play it in. We played the song, recorded it. I was like, yeah, that's better than my version that I did. And Lars, the producer and engineer, is like, yeah, that's much better. Actually, you sing way better when you're not playing guitar.
Mm.
What should we do now? Like, well, I think we should put an organ on it. And we just started going. So I went to my bank of songs that I had done. And then I would say, let's try this one. And at some point, we stopped listening to the old recordings. And I would just play a song for Billy and Lars. Or I would play two usually and say, which one do you want to work on? And they
Yeah.
would go.
Yeah.
And we just did that off and on whenever Billy was in town because he lives in Nashville now. So he would come to town for gigs or different things, and we would do 3 or 4 sessions. And then at some point, like I called Lars and I was like, hey, it's kind of like when you've been in college for a long time and you go visit your counselor and you're like, hey, how do I graduate? Like, what do I need to have a degree? And the counselor's like, yeah, like, well, you could, what, your major is this, but you're actually, like, and so I had that conversation with Laura. I was like, do we have a record here? Maybe. I feel like we've been working a lot.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, yeah, you're close on like 15 songs. And I was like, what if we finish 10? And he's like, what 10? And I was like, I don't, let me get back to you.
Yeah.
And I took like 3 months and figured out 9 of them. And then I had a new one that I wanted to do. And we did a new one. And that's when John Sanchez came in. John, who now is in Bob's band, but has been in so many other great bands. Flying Saucers was his band in the 90s that was a spectacular, like sort of shoegaze,
Yeah.
terrific band. And John is a lovely, lovely guy. So John came in and played guitar on Trust, the last song that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And Conrad Chacroon played drums on everything.
He's
And
everywhere.
so I guess to answer your question, when I think of that record, I think of saying yes and doing a lot of work and just trying to highlight the most important things first, like a clear relationship, good communication, being on time, playing a song because we love it,
Mm-hmm.
never being afraid to ask someone to do something again or to try it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say Lars is masterful at that.
Mm-hmm.
He can really say, that's not working. Try something completely different.
Yeah.
And that's not my forte. Somebody shows up, they're playing on my song. I'm like, oh, whatever you do, it's going to be great. When inside, I'm like, no. So like, to me, like that's the result of a lot of people doing a lot of good work. And truthfully, like everyone who played on it felt good about it. Like, cause we just kept working until we all felt good.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like anybody just phoned it in.
Right.
It was like, let's just stay here as long as we have to be here.
Yeah.
And it's something that we're all like lit up. And that's what we did. And like, when I put that record out, it was totally clear to me that, most people in the world, it won't be their cup of tea. But I knew that it was good. And I knew that I believed in it totally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was good.
Yeah.
I knew when I listened to it, not only was there nothing that made me cringe, but that I was really excited by it. And so I thought, well, maybe 1 in 100 people will like this. So if I can get it in front of 1,000 people, maybe 10 people might like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And once I accepted like that reality, which is most people won't, like it won't catch them.
Yeah.
Even if they do hear it, it will just go right past.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that because the experience of making the record was transformative and it was good. And lo and behold, like I get text messages not every day, but several a week from people who are like, dude, I just heard your song on the radio. I love it. It sounds like LCD Sound System. Or I thought it was
Wow.
Roxy Music. Or like it's a different reference point every time. Like, oh, I thought it was a new Cars song, but Rick said, like, and I'm like, awesome. I'm glad you guys like it,
Yeah.
And that's your relationship with the song, which is beautiful and totally separate from me,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's so awesome. I think you touched on so many really great points that throughout, 80 plus episodes of talking with musicians, I've touched on, at least each of those in some way, shape, or form. And I think what's so important, and it sounds like you've already come to this sort of realization for yourself, is sort of what success is and what makes all of this worth it. Like it feels like you have a really solid relationship with that in for yourself, because going back to what you said, this is really hard. Just in my opinion, just going on stage and bearing your soul and singing into a microphone is really hard. Like that to me is like, whoa, mad respect for just getting on stage, let alone pouring your heart and soul into songs and then laboriously, crafting them and recording them and releasing them out. And then all on top of all of that, just surviving, while trying to also be a musician. Um, so it makes me really happy, and I'm glad that people are hearing you say it. But I do think that it's important to define what is winning or what is success or what's at least worth it, to continue. And then also just, kind of loosening the grip a little bit. And I love how you said you're still an artist if you have a job, or if are finding ways to support yourself. I think even though I think great songs are written when life is hard and there's, you know, challenges and all of that, but a peaceful musician, I think, is a really good thing, one that feels quite secure. So it's always what I want for my friends.
well, and it's you're totally right. Like sometimes great work like arises when you're in great turmoil.
Yeah,
There's
totally.
plenty of turmoil
Yeah.
in everyone's life,
Right.
even people that have enough money, even
Right.
people that have a good partnership, even people who have health. Like there's trauma and there's complications, and like if you go through if I think sometimes the reason that the work comes out when there's turmoil or trauma or devastation is because you can't help but have your heart like cracked open.
Yeah.
Everything else falls away. You're like, there's no distractions when you can't not feel that thing. And
Hmm.
some people process that by making art. But I don't think it's a requirement. If you can learn to open your heart, or whatever you want to call it, if you
Hmm.
can learn to get to that space through meditation or just through practicing. Like when I say practice, I don't mean practice scales. I mean just play more songs and sing more songs and write more songs and listen to more music and read more books and have more conversations and like sit in silence and
Yes.
see what arises, you know? If you're down for that work, you're going to be able to create interesting stuff.
Hmm.
And you know, Rick Rubin has this book out and he's been on every single podcast and everybody knows what he thinks about this issue.
Hmm.
I think mostly he's right in
Hmm.
that you have no business thinking about what happens with your record after it's out.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's literally not your concern unless you're an independent artist and it's your responsibility after the record comes out to promote it. but let that be later.
Hmm. Yeah.
My view, when you're making art, you must just make it for its own sake.
Hmm.
If you want it to be like a unique reflection of you, if you
Hmm.
want it, like it has to resonate with you and be honest and real. And if you can't get to that point where that's enough by itself, just don't do it. Like
Yeah.
go volunteer at the food bank or
Yeah.
go mow someone's lawn and don't charge them. Like do something else worthwhile that
Hmm.
makes the world a better place.
Hmm.
Because like there's no shortage of important things to do.
Yeah.
And like writing another song, like like do we
Hmm.
need another one? Maybe not, but like I like to write songs and it makes me feel more at ease in the world. And when
Hmm.
I can get some kind of connection, it's like a good meditation or a good prayer or like a good workout or sex or whatever metaphor or not metaphor, but that thing that just takes you out of yourself a little bit where you feel like, oh, I'm so glad I'm here. Like,
Hmm.
so glad to be alive because of this thing.
Hmm.
Like that's why I want to like when we finish today, I'm going to write songs for a couple hours.
Hmm.
And because that's my practice. That's what I like to do, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And probably they won't get used because probably I will decide that the ones I write tonight aren't aren't going to be unique enough to get to the next level.
Yeah. But still very useful.
But they might be.
But they might be.
They might be, right? Like, who knows? You cast your line in the water and you're like, I'm pretty sure the fish are biting on a Thursday at 4 p.m. with this bait, but like, maybe not, you know?
Yeah, but equally as important because it's just like it's almost like it's flights of stairs, and sometimes you have eight stairs to get to a landing, and your landing is your next song that's going to go on a record, but you had eight stairs to get there. Well, that's eight songs that you had to write and practice and get stuff out and throw it against the wall, and like those stairs are equally as important as that landing, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And, you know, I don't, yeah, I used to feel like those that I should have eight landings.
I know.
Like I wouldn't take the next step until that stair had expanded into a landing.
Right. Yeah. I
Just
think
people
it's
abandon it. And it's like, that's the wrong approach, dude.
I just wanted an elevator. I thought I wanted every song to be a freaking elevator.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. Well, what do you have going on? So, you're still riding high on Ithaca. It's on the
Hmm.
radio. I love it. I've listened to it a couple times. Where do you find yourself now? What's coming up? What's on the horizon for Kirk Smith?
Well, we have the studio show on February
Yes.
9th, and then I'm gonna take March off to spend recording and finishing the songs for the next record. We're doing a lot of basic tracks right now, so I'm trying to generate songs. I'm trying to bring in good songs. Um, I'm not sure. I'll probably do some South by stuff, but my next actual gig that's scheduled is in April at Meanwhile. The first week of, or sorry, April's at ABGB,
Okay.
April 6th,
Oh, nice.
Saturday night, ABGB. And then we'll play again in May.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where the record is at that time. I'd like to have a record out by the end of the summer. I
Mhm.
might put a single or two out in the summer and then maybe do something in the fall. I just don't know because I don't have like no one's asking me for it.
I don't have to do anything.
You know,
Yeah.
like nobody's like, "Oh, come on, please." It'll go. Like they'll listen when it comes out or they won't. But there
Yeah.
is no deadline other than I have a band and I like them to be busy so they don't gravitate toward other projects and then I would lose the opportunity to play with them.
Sure.
If Billy's going to be in town, I'm going to work with him
Yeah.
and it feels like there's momentum. Like I have new songs and we're
Yeah.
working on songs. So those are the main things. And I'm going to do more radio promotion. I'm going to do more podcast promotion. I'm going to do more just like meeting people
Yeah.
and figuring out what they do and how this works. And, I need to make some merch, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
make vinyl and t-shirts. And like when you're a one person shop,
Mhm.
go in order of what makes, like, what matters. And in this case, the record mattered. And then getting it distributed on the streaming platforms, and then doing a little bit of radio promotion, and then booking some shows, and then getting a band rehearsed,
Yeah.
figuring out the song list, playing some shows. So I'm just kind of going through the various things and figuring out like what we can't do everything all the time, right? So like what are
Right.
the most important things, and where do I want to put my energy, and like what really matters, and what do I enjoy, you
Mhm.
know? And I I enjoy playing shows, but I'm not gonna play every night. No one would come and see me. So I'll play once a month maybe.
Yeah.
And like my guys are grown-ups. One of them would go on tour and travel, but the other two, they have their own studios, they have families, they're fantastic musicians, and they've already been in and out of bands that were on the cusp of fame, and it
Sure.
didn't pan out, and their hearts were broken, and then they came back. And so they don't want to be on a roller coaster. Like they're
Mhm.
grown-ups also. So
Mhm.
we'll get together when the time is right and play this music that we believe in, that we enjoy, and like that's what's on the horizon.
I love
There is
that.
nothing there's nothing more specific than I'm gonna spend most of my time during the day doing this.
I love it. I love the pace that you've created for yourself, and just, all of that said with such a smile on your face, and there's just such an ease with you, and your relationship with all of this whole thing, of just what you're doing. And I just feel like you have, it's a bit of a master class in sort of how to have a relationship with music 101. You know what I mean? That's ladies and gentlemen, this is your free masterclass from Kirk
Well,
Smith.
the irony is like all the people that are on their 11th record are gonna go, yeah, talk to that guy in a few years.
He's super smiley now, but
So
just
green.
no, but I do love it because, again, I talk to so many people, and rarely do I get this level of almost just, you just make me feel so calm about it all. You know what
I
I
went
mean? It's good.
I don't know how many years ago it was. Um, it's probably like 2003. I was on an airplane going to New York, and I sat across the aisle from Darden Smith.
Oh yeah, he's been on. Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, he was on the phone, and he was arranging a gig. He was like, yeah, yeah, tell him blah blah blah, and, and like wheeling and dealing, man. I was like, damn. And he was like, no, tell him double the money, or whatever. Like he was getting it done. And I was like, whoa. I didn't say anything to him. I was flying to New York to start my residency at this club, and I thought I was kind of like a big deal. So I didn't say anything. But then we ended up down at the oversized baggage claim picking up our guitars, and we were the only people there, like LaGuardia. Might have been JFK, I don't remember. But
Mhm.
he saw my guitar go by. He's like, hey, you a musician? I was like, yeah. What are you doing? I told him. He's like, oh, cool. Nice to meet you. And then we went our separate ways. And then at least 10 years later, maybe 12, 13 years later, I ran into him at a party. And I was like, hey, man, you probably don't remember. He goes, I remember you. LaGuardia, oversized baggage claim. Your last name is Smith. And I reintroduced myself, and yeah, yeah, cool. He said, you still play music? I said, no. He said, oh, okay. And he was kind of like, yeah, of course you're not, because most people aren't, you know?
Sure.
Let me ask you, how can you do this without it, like for so long, without it breaking your heart? And he was like, I can't answer that here, but if you'd like, we can get together and have coffee. and talk. I was like, okay. And at the end of that coffee, he said, "Do you want to get together again next week?" I said, "Yep." And we got together quite a few weeks, and we got to be pretty close. I wouldn't say like, not like brothers close, but like closer than friends. But it was sort of a mentor apprentice relationship where he just kind of explained to me how he can do this without it breaking his heart.
Mm,
How he, like, where he puts his attention, and
mhm,
how he creates opportunities that reflect his values, and also mistakes that he's made and learned from, and etc., etc. So he's an older guy, and he's figured out a lot of stuff, and he's made a path for himself that's unique to him
mhm,
as an audience,
mhm.
and he's doing fine.
Yeah.
He's been on the Tonight Show. He's not on the Tonight Show anymore. Like,
Mhm.
that chapter has been written, and he's on a different chapter. And
Yeah.
so, like, my takeaway from that has always been, like, there is a path for you, but you don't know what it is.
Mhm.
Nobody else knows what it is. You're the only, you can discover it, but you have to start. And you have to, like, start, like, moving through the underbrush and hacking your way and find a little clearing over here, and then find, and eventually you come across a path. And I didn't know if I was going to go back into music or not. It wasn't that I wanted him to give me a recipe for success. It was that I wanted to figure out, like how is it possible to be a full human and do this work every day, uh, given, like, the things you referred to before, the difficulties, like, all,
Mhm.
like, nine no's for every yes, and
Mhm.
just the vulnerability. I guess that's really what it is like, he had learned how to be vulnerable,
Mm,
and that was actually a strength, and
for
an
sure.
asset, and that made him so much more durable.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
maybe, if I'm doing a good job in the way I think about this work, maybe that comes across, and maybe that's what you're talking about, is like, i'm I'm just so grateful when I have an opportunity to do this work and to be vulnerable. And that's actually a source of energy. It's not
Mhm.
it's not depleting energy. It's like, so I'm I'm stoked. It's super fun.
I love it. What a perfect way to punctuate the conversation. Yeah, I'm so glad that you do what you do. And I'm so glad that you reached out and that I get to know who you are now. And I get to sit and watch and cheer and attend and all of those things. So I'm so glad to meet you. I'm so glad to spend some time with you. And I love the album. Everyone get Ithaca. And there's a couple seats left for February 9th at his studio. Nice intimate, who would play in that guitar over there. Go to Bandcamp or go to Instagram, and it's Kirk Smith Music on Instagram. All right,
Yeah.
Kirk, thank you so much for coming on. We will see you out there on stage somewhere.
Thank you, Kat.
All right. You're welcome. All right, guys, that does it for this episode. We will see you next time. Bye bye.